Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Welcome back to Case Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing, with regular uploads every week. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. If your name is on screen right now, then you're a legend. Our love and respect goes out to all those affected by this dark case. Marie France Comeau, born on March the 19th, 1972, was a remarkable woman whose life was marked by service and adventure. Her journey began early in her military career. There she served diligently as a traffic technician, specializing in loading and balancing aircraft cargo. Her dedication and commitment led her to various corners of the world. This included Germany, Dubai, and Afghanistan. During her career, she made a lasting impact. In 2008, Marie transitioned into a new role as a flight attendant. She took her warmth and hospitality to the skies. She became an integral part of the 437 Transport Squadron at CFB Trenton. She embraced her responsibilities with grace and professionalism. Growing up in a military family, Marie France Comeau followed the legacy of her family, and eventually she served as a corporal. By 2009, Marie had established her home in Brighton, Ontario, and was known for her commitment to her work and to her community. Marie was not only a dedicated soldier, she was also a beloved friend and family member, described as kind, strong, helpful, and having an amazing work ethic. Her presence left a positive impact on those around her. She was a well-known and well-liked part of her community outside of her military service. Brighton is a charming town located in Ontario, Canada. It's known for its picturesque setting along the northern shore of Lake Ontario. No one knew that this calm, tranquil town would become the site of many violent occurrences. It all began when Marie had returned from a trip. She sensed that something was amiss. It was clear that someone had tampered with her personal belongings. Some of them even seemed to be missing from their usual spot. Despite being unsettled at the thought of someone entering her home, she simply attributed it to a former relationship. A few months later, in November of 2009, Marie got the same feeling that someone had been inside her home. Once again, things had been moved, they were missing, or had been otherwise tampered with. Despite these uneasy feelings, she shrugged it off and blamed it on her absent mind, something I'm sure we have all done before. Before going to bed, Marie journeyed to her basement to retrieve one of her cats. It was then that she first caught a glimpse of a man, his face obscured by darkness, standing in the middle of the room. Before she could even respond, an unprovoked assault ensued. The man attacked her using his flashlight. In the dimly lit basement, a fierce struggle took place. The attacker attempted to subdue Marie, and she did her best to fight him off. Marie fought as hard as she could, but her assailant eventually overpowered her. He then bound her with clothing to a post. He placed duct tape over her mouth and restrained her wrists. This left her completely helpless against whatever he wanted to do. After photographing her body, the nightmare continued. The attacker brought Marie to her own bedroom. There he subjected her to hours of unspeakable torture. During this horrifying period, Marie pleaded desperately for her life. She begged him to be released. During her ordeal, she realized the attacker was a man that she knew. In fact, it was someone that she knew very well. Marie continued to plead for her safety, finally asking him if he was going to end her life. However, her pleas fell on deaf ears. The attacker attempted to smother her with a pillow. In one final desperate struggle, Marie was able to push her attacker off and jump off the bed. She ran for her life, trying to find safety. However, the torture that she had already endured left her with injuries that stopped her from being successful in her escape. It didn't take long for the assailant to catch up, recapturing her and adding another piece of duct tape to her nose. There he continued to torture and violate her in the bedroom. Tragically, Marie succumbed to the hands of her tormentor. The duct tape covering her airways ultimately eliminated her ability to breathe. The mysterious assailant left her lifeless body laying in her bed. He covered her with a duvet. He then went on to steal several pairs of Marie's undergarments as a sick souvenir. Meanwhile, Marie and her ex-boyfriend had plans for a simple dinner date. A dinner that would have just been like countless evenings from the past. As the minutes turned into hours where Marie failed to answer messages or calls, an unsettling feeling began to set in. Fearing the worst, he decided to go to Marie's house. He was still hoping to find her safe and sound. After arriving at her home, the man unfortunately stumbled onto the crime scene. An innocent man was left horrified by the sights in front of him. The crime scene, devoid of fingerprints or any discernible forensic evidence, hinted at a calculated and methodical assailant, someone who perhaps possessed an unsettling familiarity with Marie's home. This revelation added to the already gruesome case. An autopsy conducted as part of the investigation revealed the horrific extent of the crimes committed against Marie. As investigators meticulously combed through the details surrounding Marie's tragic end, they faced the task of unraveling the mystery that claimed her life. Each piece of evidence, no matter how small, became a crucial puzzle piece in their relentless pursuit of justice for Marie France Comeau. However, it wasn't too long before they had another investigation on their hands. Jessica Elizabeth Lloyd was a vibrant soul born on May 18, 1982, in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Her father served in the Canadian Navy. This led to Jessica spending her early years in the close-knit community of the Uplands Base in Ottawa. Her childhood was shaped by the unique experiences of growing up in a military family. At the tender age of 8, Jessica's family relocated to the tranquil Plainfield area. There she continued onwards in school. In 2003, she proudly graduated from Loyalist College. There she earned a 3-year diploma in business administration with a focus in human resources. By early 2010, she had already dedicated 7 years of her life to the Hastings and Prince Edward District School Board. There she worked as a transportation planner. Those fortunate enough to know Jessica described her as a warm, friendly, and thoughtful person who radiated kindness and consideration. Her joyful spirit and quick-witted humour made her a cherished presence in the lives of her friends and family. Jessica's capacity for selflessness was a defining trait. She consistently placed the needs of others before her own. Jessica's last communication with a friend occurred at 10:36 p.m. on January 28, 2010. She sent a text message saying that she had safely returned home. On that evening, she had enjoyed the company of a friend, sharing moments of laughter whilst watching the TV. At around 10 p.m, she bid her friend farewell and got ready to sleep. When she failed to show up to work on January 29th, concern and worry began to grip her colleagues and friends as they set out to search for her. Upon arrival, Jessica's home was empty. However, strangely, her car was still resting in its familiar spot and her phone was sitting inside it. This made it clear that if Jessica had gone anywhere, she had decided not to take her phone and must have been picked up by someone else. This was something that made friends and family highly suspicious. The urgency of her absence was not lost on her family. They reported her disappearance to Belleville Police Service that afternoon. As police arrived, they were investigating the crime as an additional one to Marie's tragic passing. The investigation began. Officers found footprints left in the snow in Jessica's backyard. This was the first clue to be found by investigators. As the situation deepened, the police received an invaluable tip from a patrol officer. He happened to be driving by Jessica's house the night before. The officer had noticed a suspiciously parked silver SUV at the tree line. It was situated in a field next to Jessica's house about 100 meters away. When trying to gain more information, the officer said that he believed it was a Nissan Pathfinder. He said the truck was parked there at around 9 p.m. As police looked into this report, they found tyre tracks along the tree line of the field next to Jessica's home. This is exactly where the silver truck was said to have been. These tyre tracks proved to be incredibly useful evidence. Officers began to search for the make and model of the vehicle that left the tracks. With this crucial lead, law enforcement joined forces with the Ontario Provincial Police. They subsequently launched an exhaustive canvassing operation. During this operation, police would create a checkpoint on the highway near Jessica's house. They disguised this operation as a way of catching drunk drivers. However, when the cars were stopped, the drivers were subjected to questioning that loosely pertained to Jessica's disappearance. And whilst they were there, the tread on their tyres was checked to see if they matched those found in the field near Jessica's home. After hours of canvassing the highway near Jessica's house, the diligent officers reached a crucial moment on February the 4th. Officers noticed a silver Nissan Pathfinder driving down the road, and whilst this was somewhat based on a hunch, it matched the description they were given by the caller. With this evidence in mind, the vehicle was stopped for questioning. Behind the wheel of the vehicle sat Colonel Russell Williams. He was returning home after a typical day nearby at the Trenton Air Base. Russell Williams held a position of considerable trust and authority within the Canadian military. He served as a commanding officer at Canada's largest Air Force base. In this role, he was entrusted with crucial responsibilities. This included the safe transport of prominent figures such as Queen Elizabeth II and the Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. During this encounter, the officers posed routine questions to the decorated military personnel. They treated it as a standard inquiry. They knew that a man of his stature would have knowledge of their questioning tactics. Therefore, they knew that he would be suspicious of any intense interrogations, so they did their best to keep the conversation quite casual. While they were trying to converse with Williams, he continued to state that he was in a hurry. He said he had a sick child at home that needed his care. During this conversation, officers noticed that the tread on Williams' tyres matched the ones found at the crime scene. This made the vehicle an exact match to reports and to evidence. However, this evidence alone wasn't nearly enough to make an arrest. It wasn't even enough to bring the decorated military man in for questioning. Despite allowing him to proceed at the time, suspicion grew amongst officers. The somewhat coincidental evidence that they obtained during the stop proved very interesting. In order to take precautions, officers decided to initiate careful surveillance of the colonel. They closely followed his movements for the next 2 days. Even though they discovered nothing of note, they continued to watch him closely as other investigators pieced together any evidence that was present at the scene. It was during this tailing that officers learned that Russell Williams had no sick child at home. This proved that he had been lying during his initial conversation with police. This caused suspicion to grow even more. Suspicions about the seemingly noble, honourable colonel. These feelings combined with circumstantial evidence couldn't be ignored. By February the 7th, detectives had meticulously pieced together details of their investigation. They made the tough decision to bring in Colonel Williams for interrogation. The police requested Russell Williams' assistance with their investigation. They said they were looking for help into the disappearance of Jessica Lloyd at about 3 p.m. on February the 7th. They called in at his home in a casual manner. Williams agreed to the interview and made his way over to the station to provide what he thought would be his expert informational skills. To give an idea of the type of person Russell Williams was, his colleagues in the Canadian Air Force gave him the nickname Mother Goose. He was a stickler for the rules and wanted everything done by the book. Over the course of the next several hours, Detective Sergeant Smith meticulously presented evidence to Williams.
I'm just going to move your gloves here. That's a little microphone, just to make sure there's nice and clear. As you can see here, everything in this room is videotaped and audio taped.
Check.
You ever been interviewed by the police in a room like this before?
I have never been interviewed like this.
Oh, no? Okay.
No.
Let's get this set up here.
I guess the closest interview by NIS for top secret clearance.
Oh, yeah? All right. Well, again, Russell, I appreciate you coming in. An investigation like this, I mean, I'm sure you can appreciate it's been big news, especially down Belleville way. And, you know, obviously our approach to cases like this is that we don't give up on somebody being alive until we get evidence that they're not. So because of that, we're treating Jessica's case as an emergent situation, obviously. Yeah. So we're fast forwarding things that we might normally take our time with. And that's why we're here on a Sunday afternoon. Sure. So again, I appreciate it. Okay. We're going to do a pretty thorough interview today. Okay. And the reason for that is because the last thing we want is to be calling people back again and again and again. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over a number of things, and I'm going to explain what all those are to you. Okay.
He began by revealing photographs of tyre tracks, crucial evidence to the case. He matched them to the Nissan Pathfinder that Russell owned. This was easy for Williams to dispel, however. This evidence was circumstantial at best.
You and I both know that the unknown offender on Marie France Comeau's body is going to be matched to you, quite possibly before the evening's over. Okay? This is a major investigation. The Center of Forensic Science is on call 24 hours a day helping us with this. Your opportunity to take some control here and to have some explanation that anybody is going to believe is quickly expiring. Okay? We're applying, the investigators now applying for a warrant to search your office. Right? These aren't decisions that we can say yes or no to. This is the practical steps in an investigation like this. And Russell, listen to me for a second, okay? When that evidence comes in, when that DNA match, when that phone rings and somebody knocks on this door, your credibility is gone, okay? Because this is how credibility works, all right? And I know you're an intelligent person and you probably don't need to hear this explanation, but I also know your mind's racing right now, okay? Because I've sat across a lot of people in your position over the years, okay? The bottom line is that as soon as we get that piece of evidence that solidifies it, DNA, okay? As soon as the expert in footwear impressions, the expert in tire impressions calls and says, yes, I've examined those and they're a match, it's all over. Because as soon as that happens, where's your credibility? Where's your believability? You're just another, and again, don't take this wrong, okay? But you can see if you step outside this room in your mind and imagine how people are going to view you, okay? If the truth comes out after the clear evidence is presented to you, when you finally go, okay, I'm screwed now, what are we going to do? Russell, you know there's only one option. What other option is there?
What's the option?
Well, I don't think you want the cold-blooded psychopath option. I might be wrong. Okay, because don't get me wrong, I've met guys who actually kind of enjoyed the notoriety, got off on it, got off on having that label. Bernardo being one of them. I don't see that in you. If I saw that in you, I wouldn't be back in here talking to you, quite frankly. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you got me fooled. I don't know.
Next, Detective Smith showed photographs of William's own boot prints, the same boots that he was wearing at that very moment. This connected him to the area around Jessica Lloyd's house. Again, there was no way for investigators to prove that these prints matched William's shoes specifically. Williams remained unconvinced and confident that their evidence was not enough.
This investigation will end up costing no less than $10 million. Easy. And they will say no to nothing. Any request this major case manager makes on this case, they've already been told it's approved. Don't even bother asking.
Finally, Smith informed Williams that law enforcement was in the process of searching his residence and his cottage. These were each in different counties to where the crimes occurred. The detective explained that they were certain they would discover a disturbing collection of stolen underwear, specifically underwear from the homes of Marie-France Comeau and Jessica Lloyd.
Russ, is there anything you want from me? Is there anything you want me to explain? Is there something missing that you're struggling with that I can shed some light on for you?
I'm struggling with how upset my wife is right now.
Russ, what are you looking for?
I'm concerned that they're tearing apart my wife's brand new house.
So am I. But if nobody tells them what's there and what's not, they don't have any choice. Computers will be brought to Microsoft in California. They'll be picked apart. You can't erase things from computers. It doesn't happen. I'm sure you've seen that. I'm sure that's pretty common knowledge these days. It just doesn't happen. They sell programs that to try and help people clean their computers of stuff, and our guys are pulling that stuff out all the time. The FBI is pulling that stuff out all the time.
At this instant, it must have dawned on Williams, a man well acquainted with the intricacies of forensic evidence. The bombshell dropped that his meticulously planned crimes were about to unravel. The realization that a DNA test would provide irrefutable proof of his guilt seemed to wash over him in that moment. His body language shifted, and his once composed and confident demeanor was now simple nods in reluctant agreement with Smith's statements. He hunched forward and crossed his arms in front of his chest. It was as if he was bracing for the inevitable consequences of his actions, somehow trying to protect himself from what was coming his way.
So what am I doing, Russ? I put my best foot forward here for you, bud. I really have. I don't know what else to do to make you understand the impact of what's happening here. Did we talk?
I want to minimize the impact on my wife.
So do I.
So how do we do that?
Well, we start by telling the truth.
Detectives noticed this shift almost immediately, knowing that they had struck a nerve. They continued to push him for answers, pressing him to reveal where he was on the nights that Jessica Lloyd and Marie-France Comeau's lives ended. 4 hours into the interview, Russell Williams began to describe his crimes. This dark river ran deeper than the police could have imagined.
Okay.
Okay. So where is she?
Get a map.
Is she close to where she lives? I've got maps of that general area. Which town is she near? Why don't we start there?
I'm not sure if you give me a map of, it covers Calagar down to the highway and over to Tweed and south, I'll show you.
Let me see what I got here. I might have something. Is she inside, outside?
For years, a mysterious figure had plagued the quiet Ottawa suburb of Orleans. It stealthily infiltrated homes and made off with women's intimate garments. The unsettling incidents, totaling 34 in all, had left a trail of anxiety and confusion. However, it wasn't until September of 2009 that the true horror of these incidents became clear. During a break-in in Tweed, a small town between Ottawa and Trenton, the assailant had invaded the home of a young mother. She was a vulnerable target who lived alone with her 8-month-old baby. She too was subjected to a traumatizing assault. Photographs of the ordeal were taken before the perpetrator vanished, leaving the community fearful in his wake. Tragically, this only continued as yet another woman fell victim to a horrifying assault. Again, this was in the confines of her own home. She endured the unspeakable horrors of being tied up and blindfolded. All the while, the assailant documented every second through photography. These crimes unfolded along the ironically named Cozy Cove Lane. Nearby, Russell Williams had a cottage on Stokoe Lake. This was situated amongst the same area where the nightmarish incidents had been occurring. Despite the horrifying amount of crimes that had taken place, the disjointed nature of the police jurisdictions overseeing the various crimes proved to throw a major wrench into the works. Since the crimes took place over 2 different jurisdictions, Orleans and Tweed, critical connections between these cases were never established. This allowed the crimes to continue to rise and go unchecked. During his chilling confession, Colonel Russell Williams left no stone unturned. He divulged the horrifying details of his crimes. He recounted the assaults in Tweed, along with a staggering 82 break-ins and thefts that plagued the regions that he targeted. This was much more than detectives had bargained for. He even confessed to crimes that may never have been linked back to him. Perhaps a total lifting of the weight of his heavy conscience is what he needed. Russell had explained his numerous crimes when investigators were only questioning him about Jessica Lloyd and a possible connection to Marie. And it turns out it was indeed true that Marie had known the man that had attacked her. She and Russell had met on a flight that she was working on. They had grown to know each other well as co-workers on the many flight operations out of the Trenton Air Base. This made Marie's passing even more chilling. As for her, a trusted friend likely spent months targeting her. As police continued to listen, they hadn't known that they would find the culprit of almost 100 devastating crimes that had taken place in the area. What was truly alarming was the proximity of some of these crimes to his primary residence in Orleans, Ontario, the house that he resided in with his unsuspecting wife. Williams spared no detail in guiding Detective Sergeant Smith and other investigators to the locations where damning evidence would be unearthed. This left police almost shocked with the wealth of evidence and information they were gaining. This would surely be enough for a trial and conviction that would put him away for life. As Williams continued to speak, detectives remained quiet as he methodically revealed the concealed mementos, 6 souvenirs of his victims within his Ottawa residence. This was even though he and his wife had just moved house 2 months prior to this investigation. The moving of this evidence from one house to another shows just how brazen and untouchable he thought he was. Williams did not stop at descriptions. He directed authorities to the thousands of disturbing images he had taken of his victims. These included Jessica Lloyd and Marie France Comeau. As well as photographs, he also filmed his assaults. During one of these filmed assaults, he even stopped to adjust the lighting to make the scene appear more pleasing to him. In the final portion of his confession, Williams willingly pointed to the location on a map. This was the location where he had heartlessly discarded Jessica Lloyd's body. After his confession had concluded, officers were dispatched to the location that Williams had described. Their detectives would discover the grim truth on February the 8th, unearthing Jessica's lifeless body from a shallow, desolate grave concealed in the remote expanse of Carey Road in Tweed, Ontario. She had suffered blunt force trauma to her head. She bore the markings of a vicious end that included strangulation. She was subject to hours of torment inside the cottage of Russell Williams. This gave police everything they needed to properly charge Russell Williams with 86 crimes, a staggering amount that took place in such a short amount of time. These charges included 61 counts of breaking and entering and theft, 11 counts of attempted breaking and entering, 10 counts of breaking and entering with intent to commit an indictable offence, 2 counts of assault, and 2 counts of homicide. On July the 22nd, 2010, Russell Williams appeared via video link from the Quint Detention Centre in Belleville, Ontario. This set the stage for his subsequent court days. During this appearance, he waived his right to a preliminary inquiry, a proceeding which determines if there is enough evidence to proceed to a full trial in a higher court. This led to his case being transferred to the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. There, his next appearance was scheduled for October the 7th, 2010. Williams' lawyer made a startling revelation. He confirmed that his client intended on pleading guilty to all 82 charges filed against him. The pivotal moment arrived on October the 18th, 2010. Williams formally entered a guilty plea for all charges. As the trial commenced, it was revealed the extent to which Williams meticulously documented his criminal activities. He maintained logs, photos, videos, and even haunting messages for his victims. In one instance, he invaded the bedroom of a 12-year-old girl and left a chilling message on her computer. It simply said, "Merci," the French word for thank you. Williams had taken thousands of pictures which he kept on his own computer. Crown attorney Robert Morrison presented a series of photographs during the trial. Some of these were published in newspapers to expose the nature of his true crimes. On October the 22nd, 2010, Ontario Superior Court Justice Robert F. Scott delivered a verdict that condemned Williams to a life behind bars. He gave him concurrent sentences and no possibility of parole for 25 years. This was for his crimes against Marie France Comeau and Jessica Lloyd. Additionally, he was sentenced for 10 years for each of his assaults against the other 2 women, and 1 year for each of the other 82 home invasions. In short, Russell Williams will never see the other side of a prison cell for the rest of his natural life. In an unprecedented move, the Canadian Forces destroyed Williams' uniform. This was complete with his stitched name and his medals. His vehicle, the notorious Nissan Pathfinder, met a similar fate. It was crushed and scrapped, symbolizing the obliteration of his military career and his reputation. The joint press release by Ontario Provincial Police Commissioner Chris Lewis and Belleville's Police Chief Corey McMullen was issued on October the 21st, 2010. It praised the investigators for their contributions to public and community safety in handling this case. They acknowledged the horrific nature of the crimes, and they expressed their commitment to ensuring that every aspect of the investigation, both successful strategies and areas for improvement, would be thoroughly reviewed. Many have remained outraged at the police's handling of the case. not of just the investigation itself, but how they communicated it to the public. They wondered how so many months could pass without people knowing of the 82 crimes that were taking place nearby, and that this was all at the hands of one single culprit. They were fearful of the connections that failed to be made, and the failure on the part of the authorities to issue public safety statements against the home invasions that would eventually turn violent and deadly. A subsequent review would show the failures of the police in allowing Williams to go under the radar for so long. On one hand, the police jurisdictions made amazing collaborations. The sharing of resources following the passing of Marie and Jessica was outstanding, but they remained in the shadows during the previous attacks. Perhaps the most disheartening aspect that was revealed during this review was that an officer actually knocked on Jessica Lloyd's door on the evening of January the 28th. This was while Russell Williams was actually hiding in her backyard, waiting for her to return home. This is the same officer that had noticed the suspicious Pathfinder parked in the field, writing down its description but failing to write down the license plate number. The officer ultimately drove away with no resolution to the situation. If the officer had noticed this number, the next day call to the police would have led them directly to Russell Williams within 24 hours of Jessica's disappearance. There they could have even found Jessica still alive, kept hostage at Williams' cottage. Nevertheless, the reporting officer in the case remains devastated at his single oversight, one that many could and probably would make, but one that could have saved Jessica's life. He is regarded as an outstanding officer, and his tip did still ultimately lead to the capture of Russell Williams. With these concerns in mind, 2 civil lawsuits were filed against Williams and his wife. The first was by one of his assault victims, the woman who lived alone with her 8-month-old baby. According to her claims, Williams' wife knew of the crimes that her husband was committing, but she failed to hold him accountable, resulting in extreme pain and suffering for many people. Despite the denial on the part of Williams' wife, the lawsuit was settled in the favor of the victim. The second lawsuit was issued on the behalf of Jessica Lloyd's family. This too was against Williams and his wife, which also ended in a huge financial settlement. After these were settled, a third lawsuit was issued by Laurie Massacott. She was another of Williams' victims. This time, her lawsuit was not only against Williams and his wife, but also against the police force that investigated the crimes committed against her. According to her statements, she blamed the police for failing to warn residents in the area about a predator at large. She said this left them unaware of possible dangers that were lurking. Additionally, she accused the police force of suggesting that she was making a false claim, and that she had done so in order to add to the hysteria of the previous assault. Yet again, this lawsuit was settled in 2015. On February 13, 2010, a funeral service was held for Jessica Lloyd in Belleville. There, supported groups of people gathered outside a funeral home. They held a sign which said, "Rest in peace, sweet angel." Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? What do you think could be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Please do let me know down in the comments. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.